There we have it. The MK party has announced a leader. We're also seeing that a lot of information is coming out of Kenya. What's going on in Kenya? We're seeing information about Orania coming out, the GNU. We're going to cover all of that and make sure that you are informed about what is going on in South Africa. And today, we're also including Africa. So make sure that you tune in, share this video, and leave a comment in the comment section, because it's always beautiful to read all your comments and see that you are also engaging with it. Now, news coming out immediately, fresh off the press. The MK party has announced Judge Hlophe as their parliamentary leader. Now, I deliberately skipped the word impeached because I find that when the media reports, it tends to give people labels. And some people, it does not give them labels. And I find this to be quite biased. And that's the reason why I skipped that. And I want to know from you, what do you think? Should people be called labels when we're giving reports? Should we still be labeling people? So they say impeach Judge Hlophe as the parliamentary leader. Now, for me, what is interesting is that he's a former Western Cape judge president. John Hlophe will represent Umkhonto weSizwe MK party in parliament as its leader and not as the chief whip, as previously stated by the party. Hlophe was removed from the bench by a National Assembly vote in March, having been accused of trying to influence a constitutional court matter related to former President Jacob Zuma. Now, this is an impeached judge. You'll remember that the public protector Ubusisiwe Mkhwebane was also impeached, and she joined the EFF, and she's very active, and I believe she will be in parliament with the EFF. And now we're seeing the MK party now allowing Judge Hlophe, or impeached Judge Hlophe, to become their leader in parliament. Now, I have questions about this to say, is it that these political parties are taking just anybody? Or is it that these political parties are taking people who they believe were dealt the wrong cards? And I want to know from you, because it's important that we analyze and we really look at what is actually happening properly so that we're actually able to understand. Now, when you look at the articles that are coming out, a lot of them are biased, a lot of them are telling different narratives. Now, it says Hlophe was removed from the judicial position as the judge president in the Western Cape after 305 members of parliament voted in favor of his impeachment, with 25 opposing. Now, you will remember, this was the judgment where we saw Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma not voting along, and it caused a lot of controversy, and people basically said that we also saw the ANC leader in parliament saying that everybody must toe the party line, and if they don't toe the party line, they'll be dealt with. And we saw this happen. And now, a few months later, he's now becoming the leader of a political party, which is the third largest political party in South Africa. What does this mean? Is it that there is a narrative that political parties and the people of South Africa are seeing to say we want the people that have been rejected to come and lead us? Or is it that the people that voted them out were actually correct? And I get this narrative a lot with different leaders. I mean, we all know the Chief Justice Mogoeng. There are a lot of people that have said that the Chief Justice Mogoeng should be a leader in our country. A lot of people have said that he should be coming through to lead as president, and even he has said that. But there are also other people that feel that no, he should be removed because of his stance. He should be removed because of what he's saying. But what I am seeing is that the narrative the media pushes and what the people want, there seems to be a disconnect in South Africa. Is it because the media is owned by a certain group of people that want to control a narrative? Or is it that the media is really reporting what people want to hear? And I'm going to point out the third article by the Daily Maverick, the same narrative. And this one says Rogues Gallery. And it says, impeach Judge Hlophe said to lead the MK party in parliament. And if you look at this article and you look at the image that they've showed there, you get to really see the narrative that is trying to be pushed. And let's be honest here, because I think a lot of people miss out on the fact that there are people that try and control the minds of people through the media. There are people who do so. And we've got many examples of this is happening. I'm seeing the same sort of reporting and trend going on. Now, it comes in, it says President Judge Hlophe was recently impeached and is set to lead the MK party in the National Assembly. This revelation comes after a leaked document, okay? Now, I want to quickly go here where it says, despite the gravity of these allegations, the MK party has chosen Hlophe to spearhead their efforts in parliament. The MK party, founded by Jacob Zuma, managed to secure 58 seats. Now, firstly, Judge Hlophe has a doctorate in law. Judge Hlophe has got experience as a lawyer. Yes, he was impeached. But the narrative we're hearing now moving forward is that the impeached judge. And for me, I get very uncomfortable with the way South African media reports on things. I would want to know, who is Judge Hlophe, the new leader of the MK party in parliament? What has he achieved? Yes, I'm not saying ignore the impeachment. Yes, it's very important that we state that, because that did happen and we're not trying to erase history here. But I'm finding that the way the media reports, it seems that they are not actually trying to inform, but rather trying to grab people's sensations in a way. And I'm a bit concerned about that, but I want to know from you, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about this? Now, in a lot of the things that the MK party has said, one of the things that they have said is that they believe that the elections were rigged, and they've raised so many objections to the elections. They also boycotted the president's inauguration in South Africa. They also boycotted the first sitting in parliament. And they've been complaining to say people in the IEC have been bought, they are corrupt, these are people that have been bribed, these are people that are just stealing votes. I mean, they've said all sorts of things that a lot of the times the media sort of called bogus claims and all these things. And, a couple of days after the elections, we then see a headline coming up. And I think for me, this was very interesting to say, we've been seeing a narrative where the MK party has been saying, we have issues with the elections. Elections have been rigged. And not only them, many other political parties joined them. SARA joined them. Arise South Africa, the political party, which I'm the leader, also joined in saying that, listen, we do have evidence that there was some form of corruption or misleading that happened during the elections, where ballot papers were not, result slips were not written properly, etc., etc. All the evidence was brought forward. And the media did not report on any of these things. The media went on to say the election was free and fair in South Africa. And this morning, when we all tuned into our news, we then find IEC Commissioner Dr. Musa Masuku arrested for 1.2 million fraud, bail granted. This is the current IEC commissioner. The MK party has been saying things, it's never been reported. Now we are seeing a report. It says IEC Commissioner Dr. Musa appeared in court facing fraud charges relating to 1.2 million that made its way to her account during a previous role at Standard Bank. Dr. Musa, a prominent figure in South Africa's Independent Electoral Commission, I'll repeat that, a prominent figure in South Africa's Independent Electoral Commission, appeared in the Johannesburg Specialized Commercial Crimes Court on Friday, 21 June, following her arrest by the Hawks Serious Commercial Crime Investigations Unit. Masuku faces charges of fraud involving 1.2 million related to her previous role at Standard Bank. Now, I want to point out something here. The media will not drive a narrative that Standard Bank has corrupt officials. That narrative will not be drawn out. Because Standard Bank is one of the big banks in South Africa. They probably fund the media. Maybe they give loans to the media. Maybe the media banks with them. Maybe they've donated to the media. But had this been, and indulge me with this example. I'm not talking about what happened. I'm using it because we don't have many black banks. If I had another option, I'd use another option. But had this been money looted from an official in maybe a VBS, what do you think the media would have said? How do you think the share price of VBS would have been affected? What do you think the markets would have said if that was the case? And these are the things that I've, slowly but surely, at first I used to say, no, man, maybe it's the journalists. Maybe, but now as I keep seeing a certain thread to say there are some people that are not, because let's be honest, and I want you to engage me in the comment section. Had this been a black-owned bank, what would have been the headlines? Would they not have been saying that black-owned banks' employees are looting money or stealing from the bank, that money is not safe? I'm just saying, and I might be wrong, and if I'm wrong, correct me. But let's continue to read and see what happened. It says, Masuku 62 was formerly the head of corporate social investment program for the Adopt a School Trust, an initiative by Standard Bank. This program was designed to offer scholarships, bursaries, and educational awards to students from schools supported by the bank's Adopt a School program, allowing them to pursue a higher education accredited institutions. According to the Hawks, she's accused of misusing her position to grant scholarships to friends, families, and bypassing proper selection process and committee approval. Additionally, it's alleged that some of the funds intended for the scholarships were deposited directly into her personal account. Now, I always say we should never judge until the legal proceedings are done. But what I will say is that if she did steal money intended for education and she put it in her own personal account and gave it to her friends, etc., what I would say is that we do need to look at the grievances that the MK party is raising. Because if somebody can steal money, and of course I'm not saying she did it, I'm saying if this is true, if someone can steal money that's intended for school children to go and get a better life, and I get very emotional about these things because the youth in this country continually, their future is stolen by government officials that corrupt and steal funds. So when I talk about this thing, I'm trying to say that if it is true that she did this, what would stop her from stealing votes or our democracy or brushing things under the table? And if a commissioner of the IEC is being accused of this, I believe that this is serious. Now, here's my concern. I tried to look at what has the IEC said regarding this. And I'm going to read IEC response. It says, in a brief media statement released on Friday afternoon, the IEC said that the Electoral Commission is aware of the reported arrest of Commissioner Dr. Musa. It appeared that the matter relates to her erstwhile employment. I didn't know that word, erstwhile. Did you guys know it? If you knew it, let me know in the comment section if you didn't know it. And does not relate to her tenure in the commission, both as an employee and a commissioner. The commission will monitor developments in the matter. Ends. This is a IEC that political parties are accusing of many things that went wrong during an election. One of the commissioners who is leading there and playing a prominent role, she's accused of stealing money for education. They come out and they say, oh, it happened in a previous job, so we know nothing about it. We'll continue to monitor the situation. I would want to put it to you to say, I don't and I'm not comfortable with that answer from an institution that should be upholding our democracy. And I try my best to not be biased, because you will remember, I am the leader of Arise South Africa as a political party that did participate in the elections. We had our complaints and we had a lot of issues with the IEC, but I try and come onto this platform and try and share news in a non-biased way and allow you to think for yourself. I have a lot of things that I want to say about the IEC, but I'm not. I'm going to keep quiet and I'm going to allow you in the comment section to finish off this topic on the IEC. What are your conclusions about the IEC? I'll leave it there so that people are not saying, no, I was biased or whatever the case is, I'll leave it there. Now, the number one trending topic on Twitter is Orania. What is Orania? What is Orania? But before we get there, I'm going to talk about what happened with Orania. We're going to talk about that. But before we get there, I want to quickly close off the Judge Hlophe matter. When I heard that Judge Hlophe is now going to be the leader of Parliament, of the Umkhonto, the third largest political party in South Africa, in Parliament, I then looked at the media articles, saw what they were saying, but I said, you know what? Let me go and find information on him and hear him out. Because there's something very dangerous about only taking information from the media and not the person. Because when you hear somebody speak, you can then understand a little bit better. So I listened to him, understood a little bit better. I'm going to play a little clip. It's about a 2-minute clip where he's explaining his position on some things. And I want you to listen to it. And as you listen, I want you to listen and not be biased. I want you to listen and form your own opinion. Have a listen to what he says.
I'm going to identify at least 3 categories of property to you now, which are lying there which can be the subject of expropriation without compensation immediately. If a person is committing a crime in South Africa, for example, I have guns, lots of them, I'm a hunter, right? If I take any of my guns and shoot and kill you, the gun will be confiscated immediately, pending the duration of the trial. Upon being convicted, I will forfeit that gun to the state. I will never get it again. Why is that not done in respect of
the land?
Section 300 of the Criminal Procedure Act provides that any property which is the proceed of crime may be forfeited. We have endless beatings of fellow African people on these farms. Some are killed, others are buried in shallow graves. There is not a single farm which has ever been confiscated. That falls squarely within the Constitution. It will be confiscated in the interest of the public. There is no need for compensation because you have committed a crime.
Right.
Doesn't happen? Don't ask me why. I'm not a prosecutor. Prosecutors, remember, are towing the line by and large.
That's what Batwe said.
That's number one.
Prosecutors must assist.
That's right. That's just the first thing.
Yeah.
The second, nobody can quarrel with that. That is the law. It is there. In other words, if you are a Mr. Hlophe or Mr. X or Van der Merwe, whatever the name is, and you're abusing your workers or you're committing crime, that property can be confiscated without much ado. You don't deserve any compensation. I will give you a second category of property. When you look at Section 25, it gives you it gives very of what are the things that we look at, the history of acquisition. I thought that's
very interesting perspective. Now, he was saying this at an EFF podcast, and I thought this was quite interesting, and I want to know your thoughts. So what he's saying is that if you commit a crime with a gun, you shoot someone, when you get arrested, that gun gets confiscated and becomes the property of the state. But he's saying when you kill somebody, murder somebody on your farm, that farm still belongs to you, even though you go to jail and that person has lost their life. And he's saying this is an example of expropriating land without compensation that can be brought into the law. Now, I haven't listened to the full episode, but I've listened to some clips because it's important whenever a leader comes into the scene, it's important that we don't just shoot from the hip. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's saying, impeached. No, it's important to first understand who is this leader? What have they achieved? What do they stand for? And, I wish that some of the leaders we know today were as young and agile as some of us, that they had YouTube channels, that they're able to speak for themselves, but they come from a different age. And, that's why sometimes they say that they must just rest and allow the young eagles to run. But it's important for us to start driving our own narratives and understanding what leaders are saying and how they are thinking directly and not through the lens of the media. Because when I was growing up and I used to look at how politicians were reported and what they stand for, and I used to look at them from the angle of the media. And that's how I formulated my opinion. So if the media dislikes them or has an agenda or something against them, my opinion was swayed in that way because of that. Now, as I've grown and I've matured, I no longer do that. I'll look at the media, but I'll also go to the source and say, what does this leader actually stand for? And I believe that's the best way to assess things, and I want to know from you, what are some of your thoughts? Now, Orania is trending number 1 on Twitter. Orania, those of you that don't know, I don't know the full story, but Orania is a part of South Africa where a group of white people have come together and they bought an old little town and they've created their own little town, and they're basically saying, we don't want to be part of South Africa, we want to be our own people. We want to have our own electricity, we want to have our own roads, our own things. We'll be our own little country inside of South Africa. And they're all white in Orania. And there was a lot of tweets that came out where they looked at the elections and they noticed that one person in Orania voted for the EFF. And many people were saying that everybody's going to be questioned in Orania. But what happened in Orania, or what they've been pushing for, is to say they want this to be legalized. They want to be independent of South Africa. They want to have their own sort of country status. And one of the points that was raised when Fikile Mbalula was being asked of the government of GNU, Government of National Unity, was that in the partnerships that the ANC is going into, it's going into partnerships of some people that have said things like the FF+. They've said that they want Orania to get its own independence out of South Africa, to basically be a country within a country. And he asked him a very important question. And I must commend Clement to say, Clement, your bravery to ask the right question, I really like it. But let's have a listen to what he actually asked. And listen to this. This is the question.
Lastly, as we let you go, Mr. Mbalula, the Freedom Front Plus in the Northern Cape were saying that the re-election of Zamani Saul as the Premier paves the way for their request for the consideration of the status of Orania. Is this true? Is the Secretary General of the ANC?
Before Fikile Mbalula answers, I want to just give you context, right? So he's asking him to say, we saw Orania, and basically the question here is, in the Northern Cape, we saw that the ANC got 49%. So for them to vote for their people to lead, you need 50% and above. So the FF political party voted with the ANC. So he's saying, okay, this is odd. We're seeing a political party that wants a country to break away from South Africa voting with the ANC. Does this mean that they're going to get what they want? And this is the answer.
That is not on our agenda. We've got 49%. Result in the Northern Cape.
They voted with Zamani Saul.
Yes, they voted with Zamani Saul, and then there is no such agreement about paving way for the state of Orania.
Would you entertain that?
We wouldn't entertain anything of that sort, but talking to people and their interest, it is in the DNA of the ANC. Without compromising our principle, we are advocating for a non-racial, democratic, non-sexist South Africa where all people...
So, talking to people, does this mean that they are going to get what they want, which is to be a country within a country where it's just white people? For me, this brings a lot of questions. Because South Africa, post-1994, after all and everything that happened during apartheid, when black people took over government, the ANC took over, they allowed everything that had happened and they said, let's continue. You find a group of white people that say, we don't want to live in that world, we still want to live as white people. And, you know, they buy their own town and they start doing all these things. Now, they are now going and voting with the political party, the ANC, which fought for liberation. And after they vote with the ANC, they are now asking them to say, but are you going to allow this to happen? For me, I'm very uncomfortable. I find that we must never allow apartheid and the forgiveness that happened in this country to be spat back in the face of black people. Black people forgave and forgot things in the past. Now we are going into a government where these issues still arise or come up. And when they do come up, we are seeing that the same people and the same thinking is now voting with the ANC. For me, and I don't want to dwell too much on it, it's bringing back a lot of discomfort. And what I mean by that discomfort is that it would seem that there hasn't truly been reformation when it comes to what happened during apartheid. And it's quite visible with this news that's trending. South African Member of Parliament suspended for racist language. How did he even become a Member of Parliament? If the DA always does all these checks that they say that they do and they go through all these, how did he miss all these checks that he becomes a Member of Parliament? Now, I want to remind us of this, that we've seen many leaders come out of the DA and say the DA is a racist organization. We saw Umusi Maimane come out of the DA and said it's a racist organization. We saw one of my favorites while I was growing up and I used to watch her, Ulindiwe Mazibuk. She went to study in Harvard and she also had similar things. We saw Herman Mashaba. We saw so many black leaders leave the DA and say it's a racist organization. I want to ask you the question to say, at when will we then believe that what they are saying is true? Because now we are seeing a Member of Parliament coming out and we're noticing this is racist. And a lot of people, you know, some people have said to me, Mpho, but are you not sowing division by what you're saying? Are you not creating an environment where people will be uncomfortable? And I said to them to say, the division comes from the fact that we are not having these conversations. That's where it comes from. And the division will never ever get to a point where we're united, where these things are always let go. Because you have a group of people that are constantly concerned that every time we let these things slide, and you have a group of people that are saying, no, man, can we not just forget about them and move past? Those two groups of people will never come together and agree. And it's important that in a country like ours, we approach these things head on. And for me, it was shocking to say a whole poll came out on social media. And people basically voted on this poll. And as they voted, many of them voted that he comes out. So a South African lawmaker has been suspended by his party, the Democratic Alliance, after a series of old clips resurfaced online of him spewing violent racist language against black people. Ronaldo initially insinuated one of the videos was doctored and denied it, but a statement issued by the DA on Thursday said it was genuine and not fake. So he first denied it and said that it was doctored, and then now, and this is somebody we want to be in parliament leading, and this is how the DA selects his leaders. This could hardly have come at a worse time for President Cyril Ramaphosa as he trashes out a new coalition government with the DA. After being sworn in for a second full term as the president on Wednesday, he has now agreed on the distribution of ministerial posts between his African National Congress. Now, this article is from the BBC. I want to point out, when I was doing this specific research, I wanted to show you an article maybe from the Daily Maverick or from News 24. They didn't write the story. They wrote the story on Judge Hlophe being impeached. Now, some people say to me to say that, we make these things up. And I have a lot of people. I recently had a pastor who is a known leader in this country. And he sent me a very strong message. And he was saying to me that, these things should not be discussed, etc. And I said to him that we become deceptive when we continually believe things that are not true for the sake of a fake peace. It's the best way that I can explain it is that it sort of becomes demonic. It's like you're not living for real. You are believing illusions that are existing. And my issue with this is that every single time these things come up, we are always told to say, no, man, let's brush it under the carpet. Hey, let's move forward. How are we moving forward when these things are existing? And they are being allowed to exist. And these are people that are going to be a part of a member of parliament where majority of the country are black. And this person is racist. How do we have that happening? A lawmaker. So these are things we cannot just sweep under the carpet. We can't, unfortunately. They must be addressed and we must see serious action being taken. I said to somebody that the media should be writing articles to say, if the DA does not take this, that, and this step, it will show that they're not serious about the black majority in South Africa. They should be lambasting the DA for these things. This should be what the media is writing about. But the media isn't. And unfortunately, when we look at the owners of the media, they are white, the same color that he is. Then we are told that no, we must not talk about, but how? How do you ignore the fact that when a white man has said racist slurs and is suspended from a political party, it's not making headlines, they are not calling him a racist, and they are not running stories about it. And the people I'm saying they are all white. When you go on the website, they're all white. When you look at the owners, they're all white. So how are we just going to brush these things as though they don't exist? These are principalities and strongholds. We must deal with them. We must bring them to nothing. We must shake them until they dismantle completely. Why? Because if we don't, we are just dealing with surface areas. And some of us understand that if you don't bind the strong man, you are doing nothing. So when these things happen, these things always come up and they'll never ever go away until the strong man is dealt with. Those that have not gotten me, you've missed me. But those that have gotten me, you've caught me. So these are, we have to depend on BBC to tell us these things because we know that South African journalists will never be able to tell us these things. And we don't know why. Is it because they are paid? Is it because, we are tired, in fact. I said to somebody the other day that when I even saw that the Daily Maverick is looking for funds or donations, I said, I'm not going to donate. And I'm somebody who donates to me to media. And who pays for subscription so that I do my research and my reading. And I said, I'm not going to donate. And I said, the reason why I'm not going to donate is because I have seen the narrative that they try to push and I'm in disagreement with the narrative. And that's why it's important. You know, I said to somebody the other day that I wish that we had the funding and the resources and I had the time, that this podcast does not just live as just a podcast, but it actually becomes a media house. And hopefully somebody out there will hear me, where we have a media house, we now have print media, and information is being written in a non-biased way because we are tired of reading information in the same way. We are tired of reading information that is given to us in a very negative way that does not help advance our country. So these are things that we really need to look at. But let me maybe calm down and let's look at Africa. You know, one of the things that I said to somebody is that we can't only focus on South Africa. We need to focus on Africa because whatever happens in Africa, it affects South Africa. Africa is one continent. There are no gaps in between. And if in America, the United States of America, if they focus on whatever happens in whatever state, it affects the whole of America, we need to start going at the same pattern. So there's something happening that I had to look into in Kenya. We are seeing that anger after protesters shot dead at anti-tax demos. Now, the story coming out there is that anti-tax protesters in Kenya are in shock after a 29-year-old was killed during a nationwide demonstration against a new finance bill. Rex Kanyile Masai, who was protesting on Thursday in the center of Nairobi, died of gunshot wounds. A doctor from a hospital in the capital has told the local newspaper. Police fired tear gas and water cannons at largely peaceful protesters near Parliament as lawmakers were debating proposals to bring in new taxes. Amnesty International has accused the police of using excessive force to contain the protesters, many of whom were arrested. When the protest dubbed Occupy Parliament began on Tuesday, the public outcry forced the government to withdraw some of the contentious proposals, including a 16% tax on bread. Now, when I read this, I said, I don't even know what to hear anything else. If you're going to take a staple food that the poor must buy every day, and you increase the tax on that, because it would have been a different article if I was reading that they were taxing super yachts, or maybe they're taxing Lamborghinis, or maybe they're taxing luxury vehicles. Then maybe I would have said, okay. But the moment I read bread, I thought these are young people that are trying to fend and make a living for themselves. I thought this is the working class that's trying on barely surviving. I thought this is the poor. How are you taxing the poor 16% on bread, Kenya? So let it be known that as Mpho Dagada, I'm standing together with the young people of Kenya to say, let this nonsense come to an end. You cannot tax the poor 16% on bread. It's unacceptable. And an annual tax of 2.5 on vehicles. Look, the vehicle one, it's another conversation. But the bread one, there should be no tax there. But it has stemmed from anger of mainly youthful protesters. They are focused on government and they mentioned the president there. Now, whenever you attack the youth, you are attacking the future. You are attacking young people like myself who are people that we should be protecting. And I always get involved when young people are now being attacked to say, let this come to an end. So we are coming and we're releasing this statement to say, fellow young people in Kenya, here in South Africa, a leader in South Africa is releasing a statement to say, we are standing with you. We call an end to this police brutality. We call for the presidency to release a statement. We call for it to not be done. Let this tax reform bill not go forward. We reject it and we stand together with people in Kenya. And just to show that we are standing with Kenyans in South Africa, I want you to type in the comment section, #Kenya. #Kenya. Please, if you can do it 10 times, 100 times, 50 times, so that many people can see this video and see what's going on in Kenya, and we literally create a movement. Now, don't just watch the video and just continue to say, I like the way that this guy explains politics. No, we are fighting for the justice of our African young people. Type in the comment section, #Kenya, and type it as many times as possible. Type it as many times as possible up until people pick up on it to say, we are standing with the young people in Kenya. This is unacceptable and it should not be happening. So let's ensure that we do that. And as many of us, and you know, when I saw some of the tweets that are coming out, I really, my heart bleeds for them. Africa, let's make this the most liked photo, #Kenya, a young person standing there, 7 days of rage for we have courage. Young people in Kenya. I met Gen Z protesters as young as 18 on the streets of Nairobi. The demos against over-taxation in Kenya, whereby people, not a political party, will do it again and again and again. 3 young people told me as the police. So there are so many reports coming out, and for me, it's important. A young person has passed on, and rest in peace. But we truly believe that this should come to an end. So we stand with the people of Kenya to say, let this come to an end. Let this come to an end. We cannot allow this to continue. Let this come to an end. So we stand with every single young person in Kenya to say, let's put an end to this. Now, I have got a favor to ask each and every one of you today, and I really hope that you will assist me, as I believe that this is something very, very important. Now, many of you know that on this particular channel, we have been posting the Fix Africa podcast. That's the podcast where we were explaining and we were teaching you on the importance of why it's important for each and every one of us to fight for Africa to become the right thing. Now, we've changed the name of the podcast, and I've had many guests on that podcast. As many of you know, we have now called it For This Reason. And on Monday, we are dropping our episode there. Now, I want to ask you, and I'm pleading with you to say, can we please make sure that this channel gets to 2,000 subscribers before Monday? For this reason, now I know we've got over 61,000 subscribers on this channel, but this channel, we're going to use it to be able to give you feedback on what's going on all around the world. So we want to use this specific channel just for podcasts only. So I do have a podcast. It used to be called Fix Africa Podcast, and they said to me, don't call it Fix Africa, because for us to fix Africa, the whole world must get involved. So they said, call it For This Reason. And the reason why I've called it For This Reason, I'll explain it to you as you watch. But on Monday, we have got a guest that's coming on the podcast, and I want to ask you to say right now as you're watching, if you will do me this one favor and subscribe to this channel. Here it is at For This Reason 2024. For This Reason, please, let's get it to 2,000 subscribers. On Monday at 9 o'clock, we will be dropping, and please go and make sure that you turn on notifications on this channel. That's all I ask of you. That's all I ask of you. And as we always do, and we always make sure, let us go out there and have an amazing weekend. Spend time with family, go to a funeral if you need to, attend your church service. Make sure that you get the most out of this weekend reconnecting. And I will see you when we come back on Monday, and I educate you and share information on what is going on in the world. And let me know in the comment section, what are some of the other topics that you'd want us to cover. But from myself, thank you so much, and have an amazing weekend. Thank you.